to another Lessons from the Real World webinar. I'm Jesse Burst. I'm the founder and the chief analyst at Smart Grid News, the Internet's oldest and largest smart grid site. I'll be your moderator and host today. And we're going to continue our discussion of how to be scientific about customer engagement, how to apply behavioral science to customer engagement. We had a previous installment in which we focused primarily on paper reports. And today we're going to apply some of these techniques, understand how to apply these techniques to online interactions. It's going to be a fascinating topic. Why and how to get your customers interacting with you online, but also with each other. And today's presenters, I'm Jesse Burst again, your moderator. Also with us is Gail Allen. She's Senior Manager of Customer Solutions at Kansas City Power and Light. Gail, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And also Dr. Paul Cole, the VP of Consumer Products at Tendril. Paul, thanks for coming along.
Sure, Jesse. Pleased to be here.
Oh, and by the way, that previous webinar included folks from Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative and from Duke Energy. So if you didn't get a chance to see it, watch for that link. I think it's well worth your time. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to start out with the Kansas City Power and Light story. First, what's an overview of their goals and objectives, and then some of the specifics of how they rolled their program out, and finish up with some lessons learned. And then that's going to be followed by Dr. Cole from Tendril, who's going to talk about this framework for persistent customer engagement. And that persistent word is so important, I think, in this dialogue about, how we not just engage customers, but keep them engaged. And then some of the concepts behind this interaction idea. And then we'll finish up with some actual hard numbers and results, the kinds of things that you can expect should you go down this path yourself. So let's bring up Gail Allen. She's a Senior Manager for Customer Solutions at KCP&L. She's, for the last couple of years, been managing, the project manager for this customer end-use portion of that project. She used to run the end-to-end account management for some of their Tier 1 commercial and industrial customers, so that's a very demanding customer set. She's got over 20 years of an IT background, as well as an MBA and a Six Sigma Master Black Belt. So Gail, we're grateful you're bringing all those credentials here and share some of your experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over to you, Gail.
Hi. Kansas City Power and Light, located in the Midwest, a small utility in the Midwest. I'm sure I'm going to show you on the next slide what's going on there. But what we're doing with the Smart Grid area is a DOE demonstration grant, which is providing half the funding for a small pilot project that's located in Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City Power and Light is an investor-owned utility. We cover 2 states, Kansas and Missouri, with most of our customers in Missouri. We have a large concentrated urban group of customers and industrial customers, as well as rural customers in southern and northern and middle Missouri. We have our own generation, transmission, distribution, and own the customers. Our Smart Grid demonstration grant is unique in the grants that the government has funded because we're doing it all. We're doing it all, meaning end-to-end. We're doing smart generation, battery storage, 1 megawatt battery storage at our substation, smart distribution, distribution automation, which is going to include auto DR, demand response events generated right from our distribution system. And then we're doing AMI meters, Landis and Gear meter mesh network, and then smart consumption, which means we're everything inside the customer's home. We're testing and doing it all. And the thing about our demonstration grant is to demonstrate the interoperability of all of these tools and make sure that we have the most current and up-to-date standards. So we work very closely with our vendors, which we call our business partners, to ensure that they're adopting and ratifying the most current industry standards. And that would be with, as I mentioned, open ADR, but also with any kind of, Zigbee-enabled tool. Our vendor that we're working with, the supplier that we're working with, is Tendril, and that's where Paul Cole works with them. And we've got a very strong partnership with them that we're implementing the tools. And I think I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit later on. But I think what makes this whole project unique, again, is just the everything all together and testing the interoperability with the newer standards. As I said, the project itself has objectives. The project itself has objectives like end-to-end smart grid, as I said, new technologies, best-in-class approach to this technology adoption, and what makes it also unique is this targeted urban revitalization that's happening. We believe that one of the reasons we received our smart grid demonstration grant was because our U.S. congressman went to Washington, D.C. and got a lot of stimulus grant funding for this area called the Green Impact Zone in Kansas City. Our next slide shows you boundaries of the Green Impact Zone. And what this U.S. Congressman is trying to do is show that we can revitalize an underserved area of Kansas City by helping with the stimulus grant funds. One of the reasons it's underserved is simply because of, just a lot of urban dwellers have left and gone to the suburbs. It's, the same thing that's happening in a lot of the cities across the nation. But also smart planning put a nice highway right down through the smack dab through the middle of the Green Impact Zone. And as you can imagine, when you put a highway through an area, you get abandonment along the highway. And then when you get abandonment, you get crime. And so sometimes that's some of the issues that they're facing in this Green Impact Zone. And so Congressman Cleaver got a lot of grant funds, and I list that here on the page. Also important to note, though, that beyond our Green Impact Zone, this blue area, which we creatively called the Blue Zone, it extends beyond this Green Impact Zone because we wanted to test additional demographics, not just the demographics and the customers in the Green Impact Zone, but we are picking up some large commercial customers, the University of Missouri at Kansas City, and just some different demographics of customers in that blue area. So our project timeline is a 5-year timeline. We're right smack dab in that yellow portion that I show here. If I actually had to change this slide, because this was developed at the beginning, I would like to run that yellow out a little bit further because we'll be doing a lot of that stuff in 2013. And of course, through 2013 and 2014, we'll have the evaluation portion of it. Okay, goals and objectives. I've talked to you about the demonstration, stimulus, taking this interoperability. So whenever I show this slide, I laugh and I tell people, I said, if you were an engineer, you'd probably tell somebody there's a lot of different goals in this project, and you might not talk about the customer-focused goals first. But my role in ensuring that the customers are receiving the tools inside the house, anything beyond the meter, and the education and outreach component of it, of course, I have to say that I have a different set of goals, and that's to, provide sustainable energy savings. After all, we are offering DSM programs that are centered on demand response with our tools and energy management, and trying to make sure that our customers do achieve energy savings. We also, the goals of this project is, like you can see the technologies, interoperabilities, but it's also a lot about community relations and a lot about, face-to-face working with our customers and using a non-traditional approach with getting customers enrolled in our programs. And then what Paul will tell you, a non-traditional approach for the utilities is to continue furthering customer engagement. So I think those are really generally different today than how we used to do. I mean, we have a lot of DSM programs, KCP&L does, but a lot of times we get customers to enroll, and then that's it. We usually stop there. And what this project is different is trying to advance their engagement further after they enroll in our programs. So that just takes us right on up to explain about this, that, we know it's moving a customer up a curve to just not being aware and knowing about a program, maybe enrolling in a web portal and participating in the program, but we really want to move those people into being frequent users of that program and hopefully advocates of the program to be able to promote it to other people. And Paul will talk to you about some of the techniques that they'll use at Tendril to create frequent users, and we're excited again about just a different way to do that. And quite frankly, even this customer experience that I talk about, moving them up the curve, we actually have goals that are not only a goal as any program would for customer enrollment and how many people will participate in the program, but we also have specific goals on how many people will be frequent users of that program and advocates as well. So some of the products that we're offering our suite to all customers in the Smart Grid Demonstration Grant, which includes the green area as well as the blue area, is My Smart Portal. We branded it as My Smart Portal. It's Tendrils Energized Platform Portal. You know, Paul will talk a lot about some of the capabilities of this, but it's just very, I mean, KCP&L has a web interface tool with our customers, as most utilities do, and where customers can enroll in things like paperless billing and budget billing and other programs, other DSM programs that we offer. But this portal, it goes a little bit further in how it presents information in a friendly way and how it engages our customers. So we're real excited and happy about that. You know, one of our biggest challenges of this product is that we have about 10,000 customers in that area, but only about 8,000 are residential. And of that 8,000, we're only projecting about 50% of them to have internet access. So it becomes a challenge to try to reach our project goal, because that, you do the math, you end up thinking about almost half the customers we need them to engage in this energy management portal. And we think that the other option for those that don't have the internet is the My Smart Display. It's Tendrils display that does reading real-time information from the AMI meter. And I think one of the best tools about that is A, it does not need the internet, and B, I like it that it shows you how much energy you're using today. That's that little bar graph that you'll see on the right. And most folks don't know how much it costs for them to run their home every day for energy. I think that's a nice, strong tool. And then the next best tool on the display is the fact that it will give a customer an estimated bill, which is, again, very strong for customers that are especially living in a budget. The other thing that we're offering is the My Smart Thermostat. It's Tendrils thermostat that, just is like every other demand response thermostat that's out there, pretty interesting, just as any other thermostat. But what's making our project a little bit more unique is that the thermostat, the My Smart Thermostat, we're putting 1,600 of them out there, and those are going to communicate directly to the meter. And that's kind of like what I told you about the open ADR, the demand response, being able to receive messages from the meter. That's new technology that we're doing with this thermostat. And then that thermostat is also the cornerstone tool that will be used in the My Smart Home, Tendrils Home Area Network. The home area network, it comprises of a thermostat. Customers will receive 2 volt switches, which are just plug in to your normal home outlet and be able to do demand response off of those volt switches, as well as being able to present itself through the energy management portal, the My Smart portal, and be able to present that tool, the volts and the thermostats, and be able to disaggregate energy usage off those volt switches. So it's kind of, if you guys are aware of what a home area network does, you're able to issue demand response events through those volt switches. You're able to see the energy usage on the energy management portal, and also a customer can turn those switches off and on remotely by using their portal. So we're very excited about being able to offer the My Smart Home, Tendrils Home Area Network, to our customers. We have 400 of them to offer to the customers, those 10,000 customers in that area. And to date, we've got about 11 people that have signed up for the home area network. Time of use rates, we are offering time of use rates. I mean, a lot of utilities are doing that. The thing about the time of use, our company it's a very simple time of use. I know there are a lot of other dynamic pricing programs out there in the industry. However, we were challenged by being able to offer different TOU rates for our customers simply because this is a small pilot, and we didn't want to make big changes to our billing system to do any other kind of dynamic pricing. So we're happy to say that we just started. We just sent out the mailing to 1,000 customers a week ago, and voila, within one day we had 2 people sign up. So this is fresh, hot off the press of people engaging in our time of use rate. Our time of use rate is basically a 6 times differential. Generally, our energy price in the summertime is 11 cents per kilowatt hour, and we're offering for this time of use program, we're offering a 6 cent off peak for 20 hours of a day, and up to 38 cents, it's like 37 point blah, blah, blah cents for 4 hours of the day from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the afternoon. This program's running from May 16th to September 15th. So we're really excited to see what kind of participation we get this summer, and of course next summer on this product, and really all the other products. And it kind of goes back to when I was telling you about that yellow, our timeline, our yellow. We don't believe we'll get this kind of customer participation that I show you on this page this year, and we'll end up doing a lot of the marketing, outreach, education to our customers next year to get them to enroll in these programs as well. Okay, so our goals that we applied to the DOE and that we constantly challenge ourselves on and making sure that we are meeting these goals is to educate and engage our customers in the Smart Grid project, not just the Green Impact Zone, but the whole project area, get them to adopt the tools and then influence their behavior, encourage participation. And that's just kind of like what we're saying. We understand it's behavioral changes and that's going to drive these energy savings. We also, as part of our job and what we want to do is inform the remainder of our customer base about the smart grid. Grid modernization, it's on its way, trying to let our customers know that there's exciting things happening at KCP&L. And lastly, our job is to share with the broader utility industry about what's going on with this project. I've worked for the utility industry for 26 years, and I think today we're sharing information with each other more than we ever have before, and I think it's exciting times, and we're actually being open and honest about, lessons learned, what's gone well, what hasn't gone well. We're looking at other people, seeing what they're doing, and borrowing the good information, good tools that other people are using. And so I think it's exciting times, and these goals support that. Okay, so when we enroll our customers, we've got a lot of different kinds of tactics that we'll use to encourage customer enrollment. And I think I, just talked a little bit about that community outreach and just grassroots, non-traditional ways of doing things. It's door to door. We have 2 full-time ambassadors that live in the smart grid area and work in the smart grid area for us full-time, and they're well-versed in all the tools and working to get our customers engaged in these programs, and we realize that that is a very important component of a customer enrollment. We also know that there's a lot of other things that we can do, like, for example, email. Email works. It's the lowest cost way to reach your customer, and it really works. That's the good news. The bad news is, well, of course, we don't have all email addresses for our customers, which I'm sure a lot of utilities struggle with. And I think with the new, this is 2012, trying to get their cell phone numbers to text them to see if our customers want to engage in that way, and other ways of social media, certainly email being one of them. Some of the other things up there that we show on here are probably a lot of things that other utilities are doing. We recognize the first one is getting schools involved and the students, and we're excited about this fall working with our local high school in the smart grid area. We've placed 100 kW solar on their rooftops, so we think this is going to be some good stuff that's going to be happening in the area. Okay, this is the thing where I'm telling you, I think we share a lot of stuff with each other and telling folks how well things are going and what has happened and what hasn't worked so well. And I'm telling you that, for example, we hired local labor. That's good. It's great. It shows our commitment to the area, but these were brand new people that never worked for our company before, didn't understand the utility industry, so it took a little time to try to get them up to speed on what's going on out there. We know that another lesson learned is outreach, grassroots. We know that when we hold a KCP&L event, customers just simply don't come to it. But if somebody else is holding an event in the area, some kind of community-sponsored event, if we show our support, be there as a premier sponsor of that event, then we get a lot of traffic coming through and talking to us about our tools. So that's a good lesson learned. The biggest lesson learned, I think, was the biggest aha for this project was that product adoption, a customer who enrolls in a product does not mean they're engaged in it. And that's where, Paul will talk about advancing their engagement and getting customers involved in this, emotionally involved in this a little bit more, because we've got to overcome that with our customers. I think dedicated support staff, we've had those. Oh, I skipped the one, customer tools at the time of the meter install. That's probably one of the most unique things that we've done in this utility, is the fact that the day we gave them the meter, we also offered them an in-home display, which was exciting. People were sitting out there on the streets waiting for us to install their meter. It was just kind of weird how that happened. That's the good news. The bad news is the display doesn't work. It doesn't work by design. The meter doesn't even really quite work the day you install it. And often, I can tell you that if that tool, the display didn't work, and the early people that we gave this to, sometimes it took over 2 weeks to get it to work, and that meant we lost engagement. So that's been a huge challenge. And lastly on this page is the customer segmentation. We wanted to do a lot of segmentation. We wanted to do a lot of marketing testing, but we're also trying to do EMV on these demand response tools and show that we had a non-biased way of getting people involved in these programs. So we've been limited on what we can do with customer engagement. Okay, that's it. That's exciting. This is just my little disclaimer slide that says that we are funded by the DOE, and we put that in all of our materials.
Thanks so much, Gail. This is a terrific start. Just a reminder that we're talking today about leveraging behavioral science for persistent customer engagement. And you just heard from Gail Allen, the Senior Manager at Kansas City Power and Light. And we did, Gail, have a question from Ruben, who asked, how did you set your goals? Kind of who and how decided what is enough? Charles had a related question asking about what were the expectations, or were there expectations for how much enrollees would save? Was there a dollar amount or a percentage amount?
Okay, the first one, how do we set our goals? Well, we have program managers that are responsible for these tools, and they've been doing DSM programs for a long time. We have a portal program manager, and then the other program manager is in charge of all the other tools. So first we can talk about the portal. Kansas City Power and Light has a web portal, as I mentioned, and so we just kind of applied our percentage of customer enrolled overall across our territory in our KCP&L portal and said, okay, we think we're going to take that same kind of percentage and apply it to the energy management portal. So a lot of our goals there were derived from actual things that we're experiencing with our other programs. Now, when it comes to our thermostat enrollment or the thermostat goal, I don't know if I mentioned it, but we believe we only have about 50% of our customers with central air conditioning in that area, and that's mostly just due to these are very, very old homes in a city that's, older city. They just didn't have central air back in those times. So we have that challenge of just the market potential that we have was smaller. And then, of course, we took that market potential and then applied what we thought we could get for enrollment. Now, I will tell you, our goal for enrollment for the thermostats, for example, that 1,600 thermostats, when you think about it, there's 1,600 thermostats that are those standalones. We call them standalones. Those are the ones that will receive their demand response messages.
And they receive them from you for free? Is that correct?
Right. That's exactly right, Jesse. All these programs are offered to our customers free. And those 1,600 thermostats, and there's an additional 400 thermostats in the home area network. So that's 2,000 thermostats in total. Well, when we applied for our DOE grant, that's what we wrote in the grant, and we did that without a lot of market analysis prior to applying for our grant. Now, as we move forward, we're seeing, it's going to be a challenge to get all those 1,600 thermostats in there, but we've got some secret ways. No, I don't know if they're secret, but we've got some. We're working very hard on trying to get that enrollment. We've just really started the push for the enrollment this summer, and one of those
and we had several questions, Gail, about that, and people who noticed that some of your goals were only partway there, and wondering, are you just being very deliberate in phasing it, or are we having some challenges around getting people engaged?
Part of it was not the challenges of getting engaged, because we're just now mostly launching these programs. It was the readiness of the technology. Again, those standalone 1,600 thermostats, we just are finishing testing of the demand response on that stuff. Actually, when we put those thermostats out there this year, they will not be DR enabled this year. The customer won't have to participate in a DR event until next year, and that's simply because of brand new technology. So we waited till we were closer to being sure that the firmware on the thermostat didn't have to change, especially with the standalone thermostat. So anyway, going back to the answer, is we set our goals based on previous DSM programs that we're using, as well as what we thought the market potential was.
Donald asked if you plan to support the Green Button program.
Well, at this time, our official answer is no. We have the ability, because Tendril has the ability to do that. However, because we're doing this stuff end-to-end, we are providing our customer with all the information that they need. They can see all of their energy usage in many different ways, monthly, weekly, billing cycle, yearly. So we don't see the need to be able to provide that information to the customer simply because we're doing it. Now, if it's mandated at a later date and time and we need to do that, then certainly we'll, we comply to all mandates.
Raquel had a question about employee training. What did you do to help your internal people understand this new smart grid stuff and also understand how to engage with customers? And Patty had a related question, wanted to know if you used internal resources to provide all your marketing materials, and sort of what organizational learnings did you gain? Do you have the bench strength to implement and analyze results from the customer standpoint?
Okay. The number one is the employee engagement. This was a unique challenge because it is a small pilot project. So there's many employees that are like, yeah, let me know about it later on when it's ready. Our company has a lot of newsletters, whether, daily snippets to our employees about things that are going on as well, email type stuff as well as written updates. And so often Smart Grid is a prominent project because it is such new technology and we know it's the future for the utility. It's the future of energy. So we're trying to reach our customer base just to kind of lay a foundational awareness about Smart Grid. Now, certainly the employees that are actually working on the project, there was formal change management practices that any company uses to make sure that they understand a lot of documented processes that we haven't always been diligent on documenting. We certainly made sure we documented new processes because any smart grid project will change your processing. And so we made sure that we fully documented processes because certainly we needed to do it just as a common business practice, but is also because of the DOE is requiring us to provide that documentation. So, we've even done some unique things like the employees that actually live in the smart grid demonstration area, getting them, we call them friends and family, getting them enrolled in early adopters on the program, testing these programs with us, and even, have a sit-down lunch with our executive, our executive sponsors, telling them, gosh, thanks for leaving this, and we hope we can continue to count on your support of these tools and let us always be the first to let us know what's going on. So, that's kind of some of the ways that we did employee engagement, but certainly understanding that our employees are our best asset and we need to keep them informed of this stuff. So we're very diligent on that. Then the second half of your question was the people working on the project and, marketing. Because these are new marketing tactics, I can tell you that we didn't have a lot of marketing bench strength in our company because this just is a new approach and how we're getting our customers enrolled in these programs. So we have relied on a third-party local company, and just they've been great. They've been phenomenal trying to give us, just keeping us on track and coming up with some creative ways to engage our customers. And certainly, I don't mean to sound like our own folks internally don't have some creative ways, because they do. And everybody's got opinions on what we should name things and do things. And we've got an internal team that's just done a great job of kind of keeping us all focused and guiding us with, their creative ways about it. We've got some people that do some great branding and cool pictures. It's always amazes us some of the stuff that our folks internally do. So we've been very fortunate in that area.
I'm going to try to squeeze one more question in, and then I do want to move along to Paul. But Andrew and Jim had some kind of related questions that are about in-home displays. There's some discussion that maybe those are waning in popularity. Some people want to move to their smartphones and so forth. And do you have plans to kind of do mobile versions or other versions? You're already doing a portal, obviously, if people prefer that. But will there be other flavors in the future?
Yes, that's a very good question. We have, as well as our own KCP&L portal, having it right-sized for mobile computing, and to further enhance that, so we do that, and then Tendril has, their next future release is going to have a lot more mobile computing, because we do recognize that customers don't want another gadget in their home. They want that smartphone. That statistic that I told you, not that many people have internet access. A lot of them all have smartphones. So we know that that's the tool of the future and how we can communicate with our customers. And you're right that someday those displays will take on the form of more of your smartphone gadget. But I will tell you that the smartphones aren't reading meters, and those displays, you cannot right now be able to get that information real time, some good information on that display. It's not being replaced just yet by the smartphone, but I think it's coming, and we're aware of that.
Paul?
Yeah, Jesse, I wanted to add one thing. I think one thing that's unique about what Gale is doing is that their meters are directly integrated in their DR program with thermostat. So the messaging on their system comes directly from a meter to the thermostat. So they're trying some new technology that I think is different.
Terrific. All right, great. Well, we were listening to Gail Al of Kansas City Power and Light, but now I'd like to bring up Dr. Paul Cole of Tendril. He's the VP of Consumer Products there. He's a psychologist. He's been a software developer, an entrepreneur, and he's the person who leads Tendril's efforts to engage consumers and develops the tools for utilities to use. He's got a doctorate in psychology. Paul, thanks for taking time today.
Thank you, Jesse. Today I really want to talk about what I see as the future of smart grid consumer engagement. I'll start by talking a little bit about Tendril, about what we're doing, but I want to focus on some very specific pieces that I see emerging that I think are important for the industry to understand. Tendril is a platform provider for the energy internet. We provide a series of solutions. Those solutions range from energy efficiency to load control. Some of those solutions are tightly integrated with smart meters, and some of those solutions leverage billing data from standard meters. So we do a range of solutions. And what's different about Tendril is the platform approach, the range of solutions, and the kind of unique behavioral model that informs our solutions. And I'm going to talk about that. So before we talk about the future, let's talk about where we are, where we've been with engagement in the smart grid. Initially, meters were the first thing to be deployed, and those meters were deployed without any real interface to consumers. Over time, we started deploying in-home displays and simple web data feedback. So there were data graphs, data visualizations, and those were typically on the web. Over time, engagement broadened to include additional information. So that information were tips, actions, additional resources, and social comparison. So the trend from an engagement point of view is delivering additional information to consumers related to their energy use. And the question is, what's next? I think we're at a point where there's a fairly significant shift emerging. What we know in terms of how people behave and how people change is that information is not enough, and that providing more and more information is not enough. What we're seeing is a different quality of information and a focus not on one-way communication, but on two-way communication and on interaction. And so the next set of applications that are emerging both at Tendril and I think in the rest of the industry are characterized by what I call participation and personalization. Information is increasingly targeted specifically to an individual, and there are opportunities that these applications provide for increasing levels of interaction. The way that information is going to be deployed is going to be much broader. So we're not looking at just IHD and web apps or some information on a thermostat when those are available, but we're looking at multiple channels, and we're looking at consumers having much more choice about how they get their information. And lastly, we're looking at the kind of evolution of behavioral science as an important way to understand customers and understand how to target and how to engage them. What we're seeing, and I think what we're going to be seeing much more, is a much higher level of engagement, satisfaction, and savings. And I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about the web trends that I think are influencing smart grid applications, and I'm going to talk about what Tendril has seen in some of their longer-term studies. So let me back up for a minute and talk a little bit about the web. The web today is social. In the mid-90s, the web was a one-way publishing model. By the mid-2000s, we see the web becoming interactive environment. Typically, when you think social, you think Facebook. But in reality, the interactive capabilities are much broader than Facebook. You can think about Wikipedia, you can think about blogs, you can think about the multitude of shared interest and hobby forms that exist. For example, if I have a technical problem, and particularly if I'm not in the office, I get on the net and Google a problem, and I typically find an answer. And where I find that answer is not necessarily with a company spokesman, it's with a forum where someone's discussing this and somebody has posted a solution to a specific problem. So you find these information typically through interactions with others. So the second thing that's interesting about the web is that even applications that you don't think of as social, right, they're not Facebook, have social components. So let's talk about Amazon, for example. Amazon has a number of features, typically what's popular, what others have read, and reviews that are all social. And they're social in two ways, or they're typically kind of labeled social. One is that end-user content, somebody has posted it, but it's what we call either passive or active. So passive end-user content comes from an activity that I do on the site. For example, I buy a book. When somebody else buys that book, they can look at how many people have bought that book, how popular it is today, and typically one of the features that I like best are what are the other books somebody's read. So I, as a user, haven't done anything, but the data from my interaction is useful to other people. That's one component of social. The other component is an active piece of content I put in, like a review. I may review a book. When I talk about how people interact, what are the patterns of use they see, the rule of thumb is called 1990. And they see this across popular applications on the web. And that rule indicates that typically your heavy contributors are only 1% of the population. Another 9% may participate or contribute periodically, but the vast majority of users are readers. So if you think about YouTube, for example, most people view videos. They don't post them. Some people comment, very few percentage-wise. So that's an indication of the kinds of goals we should look for, because that's what exists in the web today. So with that as context, let me talk a little bit about Tendril and the behavioral approach that Tendril takes. So we created a behavior change model that comes from years of behavior science and applied it to energy. And what we know, particularly if we want persistent change, change that lasts over time, we know that people change when they have a meaningful goal, then they have information or steps or actions to get to that goal. They have feedback on their progress, and that occurs in a social environment. So let me talk about how we've implemented that. If you're interested in behavior change, you may look at this month's Atlantic Monthly. The cover article is about behavioral science as influencing health applications. And we're basically doing the same thing but applying to energy. So the top two components, providing feedback and providing actions and or information, is what we've seen over time in the kind of suite of applications that exist for smart grid today. What is evolving and what we deliver now are additional components, both what we call goal setting or ability to set a goal, and social components, social environment. And that's really what I want to focus on for the 5 or 10 minutes I have, because I think it's an area that is typically misunderstood, and it's an area that I think we're going to see a big increase in importance. So social comparison becomes the base. So we're trying to provide additional information to people, but we also know that comparison is not enough. And so we provide ability to comment or interact on actions, which are the information, the savings actions or tips we make available, and what we call snapshots. And we provide those in a peer form, the ability to post information in a thread. The next set of things, community leaderboard and point systems, are both social and gamification concepts. The leaderboards enable people to see, it ranks people, it shows the top savers, and it enables people to see how they stand compared to others in their community. The point system is the ability to allocate points based on either savings or participation that allows reward systems to be implemented. The last social component is both a home profile and a user profile, and that allows people to share additional information. So how do we think about this, and what are the learnings, or what are the things to consider? First, we know that as we move from a one-way communication and a comparison model to a more interactive model, we need to consider a number of things, and we need to understand that the users have a wide range of both motivation and interests, from collaboration, comparison, to competition and communication. As we deploy these for utilities, it's important for these particularly social capabilities to be optional, so that utility customers can turn them on as they're ready, can modify them as they're ready. Because one size doesn't fit all, and it's important to have an opportunity to test these kind of things. The same is true for individual users. So when we provide a profile, for example, it's very important to provide a lot of choice to a user about how much they share. Some people are interested in having a lot of their information on the applications. Others don't want to be sharing information, don't want their names posted on a leaderboard, for example. So that flexibility is pretty key when you're thinking about social components. The next thing is the balance between both peer and expert. So we provide an expert forum, the ability to ask our experts or the utilities experts questions, but as well as peers. And the last is, in order for these to be successful, our experts need to manage the community. I want to talk a little bit about what we've seen in the next slide, and then I want to share an example as a way to wrap up a little bit, because I guess seeing is believing, so it's important to give you a specific. We've had a couple of very long-term projects going on 3 years, and one of them we've replicated a study. So we're the Cape Light Compact on the Cape. It's a 100-home pilot that PA Consulting did a study on in 2008. The question is, to what degree were those kind of findings going to become persistent? So we replicated the study, and we found that people were saving on average 9%, and that were over 2.5 years logging in weekly on average, and that there was a correlation between those two. I think the other thing we found is that if you go back to the 1990 rule that I discussed on the web, we're seeing the same kinds of patterns on these websites. So even as we extended to broader pilots, so we have a couple of these pilots are 400-ish users, what we're seeing is fairly high numbers in terms of 17% of people have posted information. Another 45% of people are reading that posted information. So what that means is when an end user actually shares some information, a comment, something they've done, and I'm going to show you that specifically, there are other people who are reading that as well as reading the rest of the information. The last thing is the emergence of champions in every pilot. And a champion is a user, it's a participant in the group that emerges as a lead user, meaning a very active user. And as lead users, they tend to be experts. They're very knowledgeable in the energy field, or they're people who are interested in providing both feedback and encouragement. And what's important about that role is that they become models for the rest of the community in terms of interest in energy and energy participation. And they're different from a utility spokesman. In that way, they are influential. And it's the same kind of pattern that we see on the web. So I want to show you an example. So this is what we call a snapshot. A user's posted a copy of their graph and an instance and made a comment about working with dimmable CFLs. And you can read through a little bit of it. But what's interesting is that there are 9 responses or comments to this additional post. And of that 9 responses, there's 7 different people who have posted a response, and that includes both the champion and our expert. So I'll let you look through those for a minute because it gives you an idea of the kinds of comments and interaction that actually happens on a utility energy website, and I think what we're going to start seeing in the future. So the second comment is from one of the champions, someone who comments a lot. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a set of additional comments on that thread. One of them is from our expert, and one of them is from the additional poster. And it begins to give you a flavor of how people actually are willing to interact and post information, and how much they leverage the community or other people to answer questions. And the question here is about CFLs versus LEDs, and clearly that's a very timely question for kind of energy users.
Thanks very much. That was very helpful. We just heard Dr. Paul Cole of Tendril talking about applying behavioral science to customer engagement. Now we're going to turn to some of your questions. So I've got a question from William, Paul, and he says, to claim savings from behavioral change, you need a formula like that for energy efficiency equipment. Do you have any ideas for how you verify and validate behavioral-based energy savings?
It's a great question. Typically, you want to have a control group. So you want to create a situation where you have a group that has the technology and a group that doesn't have the technology, maybe more than one group, and then you want to compare the outcome in terms of their savings over time between those 2 uses. And if you do that, you can, with much higher confidence, indicate or assume that the savings is based on the intervention, it's called, but the technology that's available.
That's helpful. Andrew asks if you have any thoughts on I call it the fallback phenomenon. When people get a comparative ranking, they see they're a leader, so they stop trying so hard, and their savings start to fall back towards the average. Anything they've done about that?
Yeah, that's another great question. What's important to understand is that there's no silver bullet to these things. What I talked about is a model that has 4 pieces, and that you really need the 4 pieces pulled together to create successful change. So what happens in our systems is that if people set a goal, they have a motivation to meet their goal even when they've seen that they may be higher than the norm. So both those components together kind of diminishes what you're calling it, what basically is a regression to the mean.
Well, Gia has a question, and I'll ask this of you first, Paul, and then maybe Gail want to chime in, because I think it's an issue for both vendors and for utilities. And she asks, for things like this, how do you handle emerging standards? And she references Open ADR 2.0 as an example, but many of these things are in flux, and of course you want to be standards-based, but maybe we could start with you, Paul.
I think those standards are critical. So Tendril's position on that was we support all of the standards, as many of the standards as we can.
And I think Gia's question was, what about those ones that are really in flux, and what do? You do the earlier version or not at all, or do you wait, or when's the right time? Those are the kinds of questions I hear from a lot, and maybe Gail has a thought on that too, because I'm sure you guys wrestled with it at Kansas City Power and Light.
Right. I mean, one of the things is, we always kept thinking SAP 2.0 was going to be here by now, and we all know it's not here. And I think it was written in our grant that we were going to implement stuff with SAP 2.0. So, we started rolling our meters last October thinking, by the time we started giving the tools inside the customer's home, like the thermostats and, further advance that, we're going to be there. Well, guess what? It's not there. The standard's not there, and who knows where it's going. We're going to do the best we can, and pushing for the new standards, such as like the Open Access ADR 2.0. And I think the hardest part of implementing that was, we count and depend on a lot about strong relationships with our vendors, with each other. And that's one of the reasons why we chose General, is because they are big on standards and they're very good at working, having this open platform and ensuring that, when they work with our vendors, for example, Landis and Gear, what is our meter vendor, they did a great job working back and forth together. Now, that's not to tell you that there were delays between Tendril and Landis and Gear due to technical issues, which ultimately meant there was delays in our timeline. And we had to go to our executive sponsor team and tell them, hey, guess what? The thermostat's being delayed, because we really wanted to roll the thermostat out last year, but we had to delay it until this year. And then even so, as I mentioned, hey, guess what? We're not going to actually issue demand response events through the meter this year because we're still testing the technology. So it's been a challenge.
Judith has a question about some of these scores, and I think it's an interesting one. Paul, maybe this would be for you. Have you tested kind of personal achievement scores and metrics vis-a-vis comparative ones? Not everybody likes to be compared or likes to feel they're competing. Some people do like to set personal goals.
2 points. Yes, I think the goal setting when an individual sets their goals is pretty critical, and we've seen that as very successful, a real important motivator. We've had less success with other kinds of ranking systems, like a specific number, what level have you achieved. So in terms of an individual goal set, when people set their goals, I see that as a real critical metric for people. And some people have preferences towards that, and other people have preferences towards the comparative. That's why the integrated solutions tend to be most successful.
Terrific. Thank you, Paul, for that. And we have come to the end of our time, although we'll leave the webinar live for you to type in additional questions. Here's our contact information if you want to reach out to anyone individually. And that just remains then to say thank you to Gail Allen from Kansas City Power and Light, and to Paul Cole of Tendril for joining us today, and to say thank you to you as well for joining us today. Please watch Smart Grid News for the announcement of our next Lessons from the Real World webinar, and I hope to see you back here then.